Can you imagine? What if I told you that on March 25th, 2023, thousands of Facebook users watched in real time as a domestic argument escalated into murder when a wife shot and killed her husband live on stream, turning their private tragedy into a public nightmare that ended with children's cries, a single gunshot, and the haunting words that sounds like, "I didn't know it was loaded?" Brothers and sisters, this is more than just a story. It's a true life experience that will shake you. If this sounds familiar or touches something in you, drop a comment and let your voice be heard. Smash that like button so more people don't miss this truth. And if you're new here, hit subscribe, because we tell stories that reveal the world as it really is. In the heart of Columbus, Mississippi, where Southern charm meets small-town familiarity, two lives intersected in a way that would forever change their community. This is the story of Jeremy and Cadia Brown, a tale of love turned toxic, of warning signs ignored, and of a tragedy that unfolded in real time before thousands of helpless viewers. Jeremy Rock Brown entered the world in 1994, born to middle-class parents who instilled in him the values of hard work and perseverance. Growing up in Columbus shaped his character profoundly, giving him a strong sense of belonging and responsibility that would define his later years. His outgoing personality and generosity made him a beloved figure in his community, someone who was always willing to help others without expecting anything in return. At Columbus High School, Jeremy excelled in both basketball and football, displaying the competitive spirit and love for sports that would carry into his adult life. His teammates remember him as someone who lifted others up, who pushed them to be better while never making them feel lesser. After graduation, Jeremy chose to focus on his personal life and career rather than pursue higher education, a decision that would prove both wise and limiting. Professionally, Jeremy found his calling at National Sale and Lease, a company specializing in rent-to-own home furnishings and electronics. He wasn't just another employee. He was a leader, a manager who took responsibility for store operations, meeting sales targets, and ensuring customer satisfaction. His colleagues recognized his natural leadership abilities, and Jeremy developed a sales training program that improved both employee performance and customer service. To the outside world, he was a success story, a young man who had built something meaningful from nothing. But beneath this carefully constructed public image, Jeremy harbored private struggles that few suspected. The same drive that propelled his professional achievements created immense pressure he rarely acknowledged. While projecting confidence and composure to colleagues and friends, he battled periods of intense self-doubt and anxiety that grew increasingly difficult to manage. This disconnect between his outward persona and inner turmoil created a tension that would eventually reach a breaking point. Just a few miles away, Cadia Brown was building her own life in the same small Mississippi town. Born and raised in Columbus as the youngest of 3 siblings, she was known in her family for her outgoing personality and creative streak. As a child, Cadia loved performing in school plays and was often the center of attention at family gatherings, where her quick wit and sense of humor shone through like sunshine breaking through clouds. After graduating from Columbus High School, Cadia attended a local community college to study business administration. It was during this time that she discovered her true calling, social media. She began experimenting with platforms like Instagram and Facebook, posting makeup tutorials and sharing snippets of her daily life. Her natural charisma and relatable style quickly attracted a following, and by her early 20s, she had established herself as a local influencer. Cadia's growing online presence opened doors to new opportunities. She began collaborating with small businesses in the area, promoting local boutiques and beauty salons. Her ability to connect with her audience made her a sought-after partner for brand endorsements, and she soon launched her own line of handmade beauty products. Balancing her entrepreneurial ventures with her influencer work, Cadia became known for her hustle and ambition. In her personal life, Cadia was described by friends as fiercely loyal and protective of those she loved. She had a magnetic personality that drew people to her, but those closest to her sometimes noticed a different side. While she projected confidence and happiness online, she could be withdrawn and moody in private, especially during times of stress. Despite her public image as a supportive partner and devoted mother, there were signs of volatility that rarely made it onto her social feeds. In 2016, Jeremy and Cadia's paths crossed in a way that seemed destined. Their connection was immediate and intense, the kind of attraction that feels electric and all-consuming. They quickly became inseparable, two young people who seemed to complete each other in ways that made their friends believe in fairy tales. Their relationship moved at breakneck speed. Within a year, they were married in 2017, surrounded by family and friends who celebrated what appeared to be a perfect match. Social media documented their whirlwind romance, engagement photos, wedding preparations, and finally, the big day itself. Cadia's Instagram and Facebook feeds painted a picture of pure happiness, of two people who had found their soulmate. In the years that followed, they welcomed two children, completing what looked like the perfect family. Cadia often posted about her family life, sharing photos of birthday parties, holidays, and everyday moments that painted a picture of a close-knit, loving household. Their social media presence became a carefully curated showcase of domestic bliss. Jeremy playing with the children, family vacations, anniversary celebrations, and quiet moments of apparent contentment. But beneath this glossy surface, cracks were already beginning to show. The first documented incident occurred in late 2018, just over a year after their marriage. A neighbor called police after hearing shouting and crying coming from the Browns' apartment. When officers arrived, they found a tense situation but no visible injuries, and neither party wanted to press charges. The incident was filed away as a verbal dispute, just another domestic call in a department that handled dozens each week. This would become a familiar pattern. Between 2018 and early 2023, law enforcement was called to the Browns' home at least 6 times. Each incident followed a predictable cycle. An argument would escalate to the point where either Jeremy or Cadia, or sometimes a concerned neighbor, would call 911. Police would respond, and then one or both parties would downplay the situation. Officers' reports frequently noted mutual combat or verbal dispute only, though several incidents included allegations of physical confrontation. The Browns' relationship became a textbook example of the cycle of abuse. Tension would build over days or weeks, often triggered by financial stress, disagreements about the children, or jealousy over social media interactions. The tension would explode into a heated argument, sometimes escalating to pushing, shoving, or threats. Then would come the reconciliation phase. Apologies, promises to change, renewed declarations of love, and a period of calm that felt like a fresh start. Each time the cycle repeated, the stakes got higher. The arguments became more intense, the reconciliations more desperate, and the calm period shorter. Family members and close friends witnessed the deterioration firsthand. Jeremy's family noticed changes in his typically outgoing demeanor as he became more withdrawn at family gatherings. Meanwhile, Cadia's friends observed concerning patterns in how she spoke about her marriage, alternating between effusive praise and hints of serious problems. September 2021 marked a turning point in their relationship. The situation escalated when Cadia filed for a temporary restraining order against Jeremy, claiming he had threatened her during an argument about finances. Court documents revealed her statement that Jeremy had grabbed her by the shoulders and pushed her against the wall, while their children were in the next room. The image of their children witnessing such violence was heartbreaking. Yet it was only the beginning. The restraining order was granted, but it lasted only 3 weeks before Cadia requested its dismissal, telling the court they were working things out through counseling. This pattern of legal intervention followed by reconciliation became a defining feature of their relationship. Friends reported that the Browns would separate briefly after serious incidents, Jeremy staying at his mother's house or Cadia taking the children to her sister's, only to reunite days or weeks later with renewed promises to change. Their social media accounts reflected this cycle perfectly. After each major incident, there would be a brief silence, followed by abusive posts about forgiveness and fresh starts. Photos of family outings, romantic date nights, and inspirational quotes about love overcoming all obstacles would flood their feeds. To outsiders, it looked like a couple that had worked through their problems and emerged stronger. But those closest to them knew better. The warning signs were multiplying. The increasingly frequent police calls, the temporary restraining order, the visible tension at public events. Each reconciliation felt more fragile than the last, held together by hope and desperation rather than genuine healing. March 24th, 2023. Just hours before the fatal shooting, the Browns attended a family gathering at Cadia's cousin's home. Multiple witnesses later told investigators that the couple seemed different that evening. More tense, more disconnected than usual. Jeremy spent most of the night talking with male relatives, while Cadia remained unusually quiet, scrolling through her phone and seeming lost in her own thoughts. Around 10:30 p.m., the couple was seen arguing in the driveway. Their voices weren't loud enough for others to hear the words, but their body language spoke volumes. Jeremy gesturing emphatically while Cadia stood with her arms crossed, her face set in stone. The argument ended abruptly when they left in separate vehicles, Jeremy driving alone while Cadia took the children. That night, neither could sleep. Neighbors later reported hearing muffled conversations and the sound of doors opening and closing throughout the early morning hours. The tension that had been building for months was reaching a crescendo, and everyone in their orbit could feel it. As dawn broke over Columbus, Mississippi, on March 25, 2023, the Browns began what would be their final day together. A day that would end not in reconciliation, but in irreversible tragedy. The arguing began around 9:15 a.m. Mrs. Wilson, who lived in the apartment directly below, reported hearing the familiar sound of stomping and shouting that grew progressively louder. She had heard it before, too many times to count, but this morning felt different. The intensity was sharper, the anger more raw. Another neighbor recalled seeing Jeremy briefly step outside to smoke a cigarette around 9:30 a.m., appearing visibly agitated. He paced back and forth on the small balcony, running his hands through his hair in a gesture that spoke of deep frustration. After a few minutes, he returned inside, and the arguing resumed with renewed intensity. The children could be heard crying in the background, their small voices calling out for their parents to stop fighting. It was a sound that would haunt everyone who heard it. The innocent pleas of children caught in the crossfire of adult conflict they couldn't understand or control. By 10:07 a.m., the situation had reached a critical point. In a decision that would change everything, Cadia made a choice that seemed routine, but was actually unprecedented. She initiated a Facebook live stream from her personal account, something she had done countless times before to share makeup tutorials or family moments with her followers. But this time, her intent was different. As viewers began joining the stream, they were met not with Cadia's usual cheerful greeting, but with the sound of an argument already in progress. The phone was positioned at an angle that captured part of the living room, and the audio was crystal clear. For approximately 3 minutes, viewers watched as the argument intensified, many commenting in real time, asking what was happening and expressing concern. Jeremy eventually came into frame, wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans. He appeared frustrated but controlled, gathering his keys and wallet from the coffee table. His movements were deliberate, purposeful, the actions of a man who had reached his breaking point. "I'm not doing this today," he said repeatedly, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had said these words before. "I'm leaving before this gets worse." The comment section of the live stream began filling with viewers' reactions. Some recognized the couple from previous streams. Others were newcomers drawn by the drama. Many urged them to stop fighting, to think about their children, to seek help. But their words fell on deaf ears, or perhaps no ears at all, as the argument had consumed all attention. At 10:12 a.m., the situation took a critical turn, as Jeremy reached for the door handle, preparing to leave as he had done so many times before. Cadia moved quickly across the room. The camera captured her retrieving something from a drawer, what would later be identified as a 9mm handgun. Viewers reported seeing her raise the weapon, though Jeremy's back was turned as he faced the door. The comments exploded with panic and disbelief. "Put the gun down! Call the police! This isn't real!" But it was real, and it was happening in real time. At 10:13 a.m., the phone fell or was knocked over, and the screen went black. But the audio continued, capturing a sequence of events that would be replayed in courtrooms and news reports for months to come. The sounds painted a chilling picture that no one would ever forget. Jeremy's voice, suddenly urgent and afraid. "Cadia, stop. Put it down." The sound of footsteps, rapid and chaotic. A child crying in another room, unaware that their world was about to shatter. Then the unmistakable sound of a single gunshot, followed by a moment of complete silence that seemed to stretch for eternity. That silence was broken by Cadia's scream, raw and primal, filled with the immediate realization of what she had done. "Oh my God! I didn't know it was loaded. I didn't know." The Facebook live stream continued for another 7 minutes before it was finally ended, capturing the sounds of neighbors rushing in, someone shepherding the children to another room, and Cadia's repeated, increasingly hysterical assertions that she hadn't meant to do it, that she didn't know the gun was loaded. By the time emergency services arrived at 10:22 a.m., Jeremy Brown had no pulse. He was pronounced dead at the scene, his life ended by the woman who had once pledged to love him forever. The weapon that took his life was found on the living room floor, just feet away from where he fell. When the first police officers arrived at the Browns' apartment, the scene was chaotic. Neighbors had gathered in the hallway, drawn by the sound of screaming and the knowledge that something terrible had happened. The officers entered to find Cadia in the living room, sobbing uncontrollably, her hands stained with blood. The couple's 2 children were huddled in a bedroom, crying and calling for their father, who would never answer again. Paramedics rushed to Jeremy's side, but it was immediately clear that nothing could be done. As they led Cadia outside in handcuffs, she repeated through tears, "I didn't know it was loaded. I didn't mean to." The investigation moved swiftly. Detectives collected evidence from the apartment, including the firearm, Cadia's phone, and the device used to stream the incident live. They interviewed neighbors, family members, and those who had watched the Facebook live video in real time. The footage, which had already begun circulating online, became a central piece of evidence. News of the live-streamed murder spread rapidly through Columbus and beyond. The community was stunned, struggling to process how a family so familiar to many could be at the center of such a public tragedy. Vigils were held for Jeremy, with friends and co-workers remembering him as a devoted father and a kind, hard-working man. In the days following Jeremy's death, Cadia was formally charged with second-degree murder. The prosecution argued that her actions were reckless and intentional, pointing to the Facebook live video as evidence of escalating anger and a conscious decision to retrieve and use a firearm during a heated argument. Cadia's defense team asserted that the shooting was a tragic accident. In her statements, Cadia maintained that she did not know the gun was loaded and never intended to harm Jeremy. Her attorneys emphasized her emotional distress, the chaotic environment, and the history of conflict between the couple. The court proceedings drew significant attention, with the Facebook live footage played in court, its audio filling the silent room as jurors, family members, and reporters listened to the final moments of Jeremy's life. In a dramatic turn, Cadia ultimately entered a guilty plea to second-degree murder as part of a plea agreement. Circuit Judge Michelle Easterling sentenced her to 40 years in prison with 6 years suspended, meaning she would serve 34 years before being eligible for parole. The sentence reflected both the severity of the crime and the court's recognition of the complex, painful circumstances surrounding the case. Following Jeremy's death and Cadia's arrest, their 2 children faced an immediate and profound disruption to their lives. Having been present in the home during the shooting, they experienced the trauma firsthand. Court records indicate that custody arrangements were made, though the specific details were kept private to protect the children's welfare. The long-term consequences for these children remain the most heartbreaking aspect of this tragedy. Research on childhood trauma indicates that witnessing parental homicide creates significant psychological challenges that often require ongoing professional support. While their specific journey remains private, child welfare experts note that stability, therapy, and consistent support systems are crucial for children who have experienced such trauma. The tragedy of Jeremy Brown's death serves as a stark reminder of how domestic violence can escalate to fatal consequences. The documented history of incidents, the pattern of reconciliation without meaningful intervention, and the presence of a firearm in a home with ongoing conflict created the perfect storm for tragedy. This case became part of ongoing national conversations about domestic violence prevention, the effects of trauma on children, and the intersection of social media and private conflicts. The fact that it was broadcast live added a disturbing dimension that experts continue to study and debate. If this story teaches us anything, it's that domestic violence rarely begins with extreme acts. Instead, it develops gradually, with boundaries eroding over time and conflicts intensifying until what once seemed unthinkable becomes reality. By recognizing early warning signs and taking decisive action, we can help prevent future tragedies and protect vulnerable families from irreparable harm. Jeremy Brown was 28 years old when he died. He was a son, a father, a colleague, and a friend. His life was cut short by a cycle of violence that could have been broken if only the right interventions had been in place at the right time. His story is a tragedy, but it's also a call to action. A reminder that we all have a role to play in recognizing and responding to domestic violence before it reaches its ultimate, irreversible conclusion. The last Facebook live stream ended at 10:20 a.m. on March 25, 2023. But the conversation it started, about domestic violence, about warning signs, about the responsibility we all share to protect one another, continues to this day. In that conversation lies the hope that Jeremy's death was not in vain, and that other families might be spared the same tragic fate.